So good afternoon. Welcome to Business as Usual, live from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. This is Audrey Russo, and I am the President and CEO of the Pittsburgh Technology Council. And I am here with Jonathan Kirsting on our team. He's Vice President of Visibility and all things media. So just a couple of setup for today before we are introducing our guest. But it would not have been possible. As you can see, our relationship with Huntington Bank and AT&T is deep and wide. They have believed in us for a long time, and they have partnered with us on this series. So we're very thankful for both of them and the work that they've done in our region, Huntington Bank being #1 in SBA lending, and AT&T for their continued sponsorship of everything related to the pandemic, including helping get people the food they need. So we're really wrestling with very, very significant issues. A quick programming note: tomorrow as we go live with Rich Lunak, he's the President and CEO of Innovation Works. They were recently provided with additional state capital to help local startups. As a reminder, we have rescheduled Harry Mosley, but we're excited about that because Zoom has announced their investment in Pittsburgh this morning, and we have the global CIO for Zoom on May 27th. So we're very, very excited about that. They're opening up offices both in Pittsburgh and in Phoenix. I also want to give a little bit of a reminder that we're hosting a Pittsburgh Civic Hackathon this weekend, and it starts tomorrow night in partnership with Rust Built. The registration will close tonight, and any idea submissions are due tomorrow at noon. Listen to me, Zoom.
Zoom at noon.
And yeah, I got Zoom on my mind. And Ryan Gent on the team, he's giving a link right now for anyone who's interested. It could be anyone from anywhere. We're very excited about this weekend, so really appreciate that. So just a little bit about the tech. If you haven't been on the call before, we've muted all of you, and we do that because you might have noise, you might have drilling, might have lots of things going on in the background, but we want to make sure that you can hear our guest very clearly. And then with that said, though, we want it to be interactive. So please ask questions. We will have enough time, hopefully, to have a little bit of a chat with Patrick, and we will moderate that as well. So thanks everyone for being here. So right now we're going to jump in, and I am going to bring on our guest today, Patrick McKenna, and in his role with One America Works. So I want to say welcome. He's here this morning from Austin, so it's not that early, but it's definitely his morning over there. So welcome, Patrick.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So let's just set the stage. So can we start out by having you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, and then share the overview of your vision and strategies of One America Works and why that matters to all of us here in Pittsburgh?
Well, terrific. And thank you for the invitation and all the work you're doing to bring a community together in this time and really bring important information. I've actually watched a couple of the episodes and have learned quite a bit about Pittsburgh and also about just some great business topics. So I want to thank you for that. So my background, I really think of it as an entrepreneur. I've started 4 companies. My specialty is in technology-enabled services. The first company I co-founded was called LiveOps, and we built technology that enabled people to work from home and do customer service, and grew that from 0, just me and a couple engineers in a small office with a whiteboard. We grew that to 20,000 people, and those 20,000 workers mostly worked outside of Silicon Valley, about 700 in Palo Alto, and the vast majority of people worked from home in places like Western Pennsylvania, the Southeast, Maine, all over the country. And through that experience, what I really learned was through technology, we can access a very high quality, vibrant, and motivated talent workforce. And that's really informed a lot of things that I've done. I've done data companies. My third company is called NextRep. I decided to start that in Portland, Maine. It's just this idea that there's talent everywhere yet again, and we put a management team there. And again, this was business process outsourcing. And it turns out a lot of people were left behind who had these skills when the call center businesses and the catalog businesses left New England. They left a lot of talent behind. And in that business, we were able to access a lot of unique talent to build a really strong business. And my most recent company is called Facet Wealth. And this is a fintech company focused on wealth management. And this company is based in Baltimore. And the idea here is why Baltimore is like Johns Hopkins, great talent source. There's also T. Rowe Price and Lake Mason and Brown Advisors and University of Maryland. There's just a tremendous amount of talent, not only on the technical side, but also in the industry that we were looking to tap for our team. Started that company about 4 years ago. We've raised $37 million. We got 150 people in the company, thousands of clients, and it's a company really built for the current time we're in, with a distributed workforce of people mostly working from home now, everybody working from home, but again, accessing talent all over the country. And so there's this real theme in my technology background that says, how does technology lower the cost of a workflow or delivering a service? How does it increase the productivity of labor? And then how do we get more people in more places engaged in solving problems? And so that's how I frame up my professional background. I've kind of taken that into, as an investor these days, I'm the chairman of Facet, so I have a little bit more time. So I have a venture fund called High Ridge Ventures, and it's specifically focused on the talent is everywhere thesis. 20 of the 30 active investments right now out of 47 total made, 20 are outside of Silicon Valley, from Pittsburgh to Columbus to Milwaukee, again, Baltimore. And again, I see this as, in some ways, just something I know as an investor that other people haven't really caught on to yet, is that if you bring sophisticated capital, experienced knowledge networks, and tap into a talent force that's thinking about different problems, you can actually create some really interesting magic. And so that's been my thesis there. And I also have an opportunity zone fund that is focused on real estate, kind of building the work, kind of the built environment in places, the same places we're talking about. I have some partners in Salt Lake City, so it's Salt Lake and Austin. And we've invested just this year $30 million in adaptive reuse for like configurable workspace in Salt Lake, and tech workforce housing like in Bozeman, and we're looking at places. So that's kind of the professional background that I bring to this. On a personal level, just very quickly, I grew up in a small town in Northern California. First in my family to go to college. I went on a full ride scholarship to USC, Army ROTC. Spent 4 years in the military. They trained me as a technology officer, military intelligence. I had an amazing 4 years, airborne school, all the fun stuff there. But also, again, learned about people from different backgrounds around the country and the power of working together. And so after the military, I went to business school, went to Wall Street, and then became an entrepreneur. So, I think that I really feel more connected to places like Western Pennsylvania and other places around the country because of where I grew up, and then also where I've had some success professionally. To kind of, I know, speed up a little bit, but to get to the One America Works thing, is that this is really important. And we're really focused on 3 problems. The first problem is, for the country to succeed over the next century, we need to access more talent in more places. We can't do it with just a few zip codes in a small part of the country. We can't have a narrow access to talent to solve the problems that we need to in the world. If America wants to lead, we need to get the 50% of the workforce and the talent that's sitting on the sidelines, we need to get it engaged in the modern economy. And then a lot of people say to me, well, aren't all the talented people in San Francisco? I said, there's a ton of talented people in San Francisco. In fact, there's amazing talented people. But have you ever thought about where they come from? They probably from Western Pennsylvania, from Lancaster. They're from, from Detroit. They went to Michigan. They went to OSU, and they showed up in these cities, right? And so the talent question isn't really the question. It really gets down to the other 2 problem is, how do innovative companies that are kind of somewhat landlocked where they're innovating get access to the talent they need, right? That's the other problem, is how do we continue to grow? The third problem is, for places like Pittsburgh and Columbus that are generating tons of talent every year, how do you create more opportunity for your local talent? And so One America Works is actually addressing all 3 of these problems by building connections between the Silicon Valley innovation economy and then the talent that in the networks and the assets that are already sitting in places like Pittsburgh, but are underutilized. And so with One America Works, we have a team in Silicon Valley that talks to VCs and growth companies, says, hey, are you ready to open another office? Let me help you pick a city. And then we have city coordinators. We have one in Pittsburgh who coordinates all the local resources that says, this is what we do, how we do it, and get you started quickly. We make that connection, we step aside and let the magic happen.
Well, that's great. And glad that you're doing that, and glad that Pittsburgh probably should be number 1 on your map, because we believe that for many years that Pittsburgh's strongest assets are our talent pool, and similar to what you said, and our universities. So many of our economic development organizations are still mostly using models that were developed in the 90s, if not earlier. And they were built primarily around responsiveness, inbound, RFPs, things that are in many ways passive, but are, thrown at you. And being in business, that's not the way the world works. Nothing's really inbound other than technical support. So and also financial incentives. If we look back at what's happened in Pittsburgh, many of the companies that are here now, whether they're doing R&D or they've opened up part of their offices, they're not asking for economic incentives. They're really just looking for talent, as you've articulated. What's your advice though? So now that you shared with us everything that you have seen and you've been a part of, and now that you've launched this One America Works, what's your advice to local and state agencies in terms of updating strategies and tactics?
I think it's really great you started here, because one of the first things that I did as an entrepreneur is I said, I see this opportunity, I see this challenge, or you call it problem. I said, how is it being addressed today? Like, why isn't it being solved? And I will validate everything that you just said. There's an antiquated model for how to develop the opportunities that maybe made sense in the 90s, but not updated for the companies that are going to be expanding, right? It's just not marketed well to them. And also, as a person who has a sales background, I thought about that workflow. And so the way I looked at it was to say, a lot of the economic development tools that, first of all, I'm going to give a lot of praise to Pittsburgh for having a tremendous amount of resources. You're starting way ahead of the game. I mean, for example, the organization that organized this, there are a lot of really high intention, well-funded, well-connected resources in Pittsburgh. So I looked at it and says, well, how do we upgrade the connectivity to the companies that need access to Pittsburgh and the talent, and kind of match that talent that's already there in these organizations? So here's the way I think about it, is that sure, you have some inbound, but those inbounds, you don't control your own funnel, right? Typically it's a real estate agency or some consultant or something like that who's already vetted a lot of opportunities ahead of you, and then they come with some preconceived notions of what you have to pay to play. So I said, well, if you have a place like Pittsburgh that has amazing talent, you are the resource. You are actually what the companies are looking for. You can't make it, you have it. So how do you get more direct access to those opportunities earlier? Okay. And so the two functions, one is creating this persistent relationship in Silicon Valley. I'll refer us all to the Irish Development Agency, the IDA. If anybody hasn't followed them, if you want to study economic development, study the IDA. They have full-time teams in Silicon Valley that will buy you drinks, show you research, hold your hand on your trip to not just to Dublin, but to every city around Ireland, and not just sell tax rate, but to sell talent, access, speed to market, all these sorts of things. And I said, we don't have an internal version of the IDA. We just don't. We should. And so with One America Works, I thought, well, can we create a persistent presence who's telling the constant story, finding people earlier in the opportunity set, like earlier up the funnel? Yes, but then what story do we tell? And this is, I think, the place where cities, including Pittsburgh, fall down the greatest, is a lot of times the stories are told to yourself, not to the outside. Mm-hmm. It's like, we're great, we're Pittsburgh, we're great, we're Columbus, we're great. The truth is you're selling a product. What you need to do is tell other people how great you are and put it in a way that they understand. And so the couple first things that we did was we worked in Pittsburgh is great. We started talking to folks and said, well, if we can do anything, show us, we'll help you. And so with One America Works, we created a 4-page summary of why you should go to Pittsburgh. And you can go to oneamericaworks.org and go to the cities and click on Pittsburgh and see this beautiful, it's a PDF if you want. It answers 4 questions. And so here's the framework that every city needs to think about, because companies that are expanding are going to use this framework. 1, talent. Do you have the talent that I'm looking for? 2, cost. What's the cost of that talent? Is that talent cost less than I have now? Because if it's more, it doesn't help me. Cost. 3, quality of life. What's the quality of the life of my worker who's going to be there? Are they happy? Do they, all those sorts of things. And then 4, is access. Can I get there? Can I fly there? Is there office space that I can rent that has, modern facilities, high-speed internet, all those sorts of things? So access isn't just the airport, but the airport is vital. Direct flight. I know you've had a session here with your airport, and your airport has gotten so good. And I'm sure it will be great yet again once we get back to work here. So I want to put that first framework there is the talent that the company is looking for at a cost that makes the move make sense, that the quality of life fits the values of the company that you're trying to attract, and access, that you have access points to the place where that company is generally housed.
So, given that that's what, those are actually many of the pinnacles of what we operate at the Tech Council. The one thing I would say is understanding what the definition is of quality of life. What does that really mean? Because quality of life to you might be very different than it is to Jonathan. And the operant definition of it varies, across where you are in your life. So I would say, what should we be thinking about when you talk about quality of life?
First thing about quality is that you can't be everything to everybody. That is just, it's such a true insight. So what are the values? Like, what does Pittsburgh bring so uniquely? Like, when I think about it, I think you have very affordable housing. I think you have very good public schools. I think that you have great like cultural amenities like opera and museums, but you also have great sport amenities. You have every professional sport, from baseball to football to hockey. These are things that are already built into the product that is Pittsburgh, and it's at an accessible price, right? So you can get all those things in New York as well, by the way. Very expensive. But in Pittsburgh, similar product, but it's actually lower cost. Now, some people want a more cosmopolitan lifestyle. That's just how some people are. But there's a bunch of people who say, you know what? Pittsburgh actually is a metropolitan enough for me. I got enough walking communities. Oh, I want to live in a 20-minute commute where I can send my kids to a good public school, but we can have tickets to the opera, and we can actually get tickets to a football game or something like that, that it would be really hard to get if you're in LA or something like that. So I think really defining your product in terms of quality of life around what is real. Let me just make one small point. This is really important branding. Like I have found in my work that if I'm trying to talk to a company about going somewhere, the brand in the mind already has to be in place. It's really hard to start from scratch and teach somebody that's a good place. Here's the mental model I'll offer for you. Series C company just raised $50 million. They've got 500 people in Silicon Valley. The CFO says, great, we have the money, now open the next office somewhere else. CEO shows up for the meeting on Monday morning and says, team, great news, we have $50 million. We're gonna open our second office. He's got 3 responses. 1, he says, hey, we're going to open office in New York. This is pre-COVID, this example, right? And everybody says, wow, I love New York. If I can get paid trips to New York once a quarter, that sounds great. I don't really want to live there, but I'd love to go there. That meets my values as a technology worker, knowledge worker. 2, the CEO says, we're opening an office in Austin, and you're going to have the chance to move there if you want. You don't have to, but we're going to have it. What do people think? You guys what did you think with Austin? Awesome. Music, outdoors, beer, like it's still tech, it's blue. Like there's a lot of reasons you say that fits my values. Now 3, the CEO says, put your city in there. What does the team think? I'm not going to call in any cities, but some places, X, they go, huh, you're not sending me there, right? I'm not going there. Like, good for you, but I'm not going there. And some places might be like, you know what? That's a place that I don't believe in. That actually works against the values of the company. So I think the answer to your question, Audrey, is Pittsburgh needs to put itself in that branding position of what do people think. And I actually think that the truth of Pittsburgh is so much further ahead than the reality than people's mind. Right? So when I brought people to Pittsburgh, people go, this is beautiful. It's clean. There's green parks. Oh my God, this is amazing. For 250 grand, I can buy a house so I can have some kids in it. This is amazing. So I think matching the brand with the reality that in Pittsburgh has a big advantage in this because the reality is very good. Does that mental model make sense? Like put yourself in.
I mean, I agree. I mean, you're talking to people like Jonathan and myself who do half of our job is storytelling. And our belief is our work is not, we started out telling stories to Pittsburgh. We're no longer interested in that. We just want to tell the stories to the world.
One thing we did at a One America Works, Audrey, you may have seen this, is that we actually did a video. So we did this, think of everything that we're doing is from like site selectors. Like I was a site selector. The One America Works team is basically people who are from outside looking at it. And we did a 2-minute video using local talent to do the video. But you can go to the oneamericaworks.org page and go to the Pittsburgh page and watch the video. and you'll see a completely different framing than the video that Pittsburgh did, say, about a year ago with the chair. Like,
right.
you're going to see one that's vibrant, energetic, diverse, riding your bike, beautiful, and it's told towards people who actually need to be sold a little bit.
No, it's great. It's great. You're speaking to my heart. So it's great. So let's just take a minute and let's just talk about reality right now. Okay. So reality, the stage is that, you know, you saw some things prior to the pandemic and that, you know, the world has changed. So what does that mean? Do we move? Because we're seeing trends here that I don't want to hog up your time here because I want to hear from you. Does the move to virtual offices? I mean, we're seeing people like you saw Jack, you know, Dorsey say, hey, we are going to, you know, never make people come into the office again. You can work wherever you want. We're seeing companies like Google and Facebook, et cetera, out in the Bay Area saying, you don't have to come back to work until, you know, January 1st, et cetera. So what do you think that's changed what in terms of where we head? And is there, I think there's an opportunity in here, but I want to hear from you.
So everything has changed. And I think it's real and it's lasting. And in some ways, though, I would say it's actually just accelerated trends that were already happening. Right? The trend towards people moving out of the Bay Area, the trends towards companies leveraging more distributed work, like these things were already happening. Now this has put it at very high speed. I had a way of saying it. I was asked this question even a month ago. I said, well, today everybody's a distributed company, right? Like it was one day you weren't, the next day you were. And so there's three big things that kind of came out of this that I think are going to be persistent and lasting. And then I think there are two opportunities for Pittsburgh to think about. One is the cultural shift of not having everybody in the corporate headquarters. Right? A lot of times you would talk to companies, I'm sure you guys did this, right? You said, oh man, I need all my critical people. I need my key managers. My best people have to be in our campus in Menlo Park or Mountain View. There was a cultural bias to that, and that was going to be hard to break. Well, it turns out that everybody's distributed, and whether they're a block away or 100 miles away or 1,000 miles away, you are now realizing that it's not true. Everybody has to be in the same office. Number two is one, I think of it more as a compliance issue, is that if you didn't do well in this virtual world, then you now have a huge board level initiative that you need to change. Because this isn't the last of these things we're going to get, and the world's not going to go. If your business isn't operating at like a high, like pretty high efficiency right now, you're making some changes to support distributed. Right? You're just having to do it. Right? It's actually a business continuity problem. And then three, which is also really powerful, is the amount of investment that's going into supporting the virtual and distributed workforce is unprecedented. Like I like to say, like this Zoom experience we're having right now, this is going to feel like the Flintstones a year from now. There's so much, like think of the most brilliant engineers that you can imagine now are dealing with this level of tech, and they're going, there's got to be a better way. And now they're going to be coming up with solutions. And so there's a big tech investment that's coming that's going to change the way companies can and will work. Now, how does this impact regional cities? There's two audiences. One is the typical like second office corporate relocation. Now, I think a lot of that's still going to happen, by the way. I think there's a bunch of jobs that are be like, you know what? It wasn't as productive being virtual. We still want to get teams together. But here's the problem. Going back to your office in San Francisco, the spacing isn't going to work. You're going to need 6 feet. It's going to be a lot of problems. So the heads per square foot are going to change. The price per square foot is not going to change. The cost per employee per square foot is going to go up. And so I think to the extent that there is some work that has to be done in physical location or a preference, companies are going to need to even move further out. And this is, I mean, we're all theorizing, right? I see that if you need to have 100 people in physical space and you only have room for 60, you're not going to buy more space in San Francisco. You're going to need to put those 40 people somewhere. And I think the cost advantage and all these other things may benefit places like Pittsburgh. The second audience is the tech worker audience. And this is the one you kind of got to. We at One America Works haven't spent as much time about the individual worker in the past, but we're focusing there now, is what's your pitch, not to a company, but what's your pitch to the individual worker? Now, we all know, and I'm a big fan of Pittsburgh, and I know a lot of great companies have had some challenges getting some key talent, right? Like a product manager is a really hard job to fill everywhere. Pittsburgh's no exception. deep tech, somebody who can write vision learning software, tons of that in Pittsburgh, but that product manager is a hard slot to fill. I think that places like Pittsburgh can now reach out to Silicon Valley and poach some of that talent that maybe's come on the sidelines, and then augment your local companies in a way that you couldn't otherwise. But the key to that is getting back to my earlier thing. How do you make Pittsburgh a destination for the virtual worker? Like, people still want to be around birds of a feather, right? You might work from home for Twitter, but on the weekends, you still want to be around people who think like people who work at Twitter and go on bike rides and, and do stuff like that. So there's a social element that's even more, but the competition is a little harder because, you're competing with Bend, Oregon now, frankly, right? And so I would say that you've got two audiences here. One is the regional office, which I think you have a very strong case. And then on the future tech workers destination, like Tulsa will pay you $10,000 to move to Tulsa and bring your tech job. That's been around for a year. So I'd expect to see more of that.
How is that going though?
I bet it's improved, I would say. One thing that we're going to experiment with, very relevant to the group here, is One America Works is sponsoring a virtual job fair next Thursday on May 21st. We're just announcing it today. We've been setting it up, where we have 13 or 14 Pittsburgh companies who have open job recs that they want to fill. We are going to do a live job fair session targeting Bay Area recently unemployed workers to come in and interview for those jobs. And the idea here is there are still some talent gaps that if you can, promote Pittsburgh great companies, Astro Robotica, and like these are really great companies that are still hiring in Pittsburgh, and expose the tech workforce in Silicon Valley to these great companies. This is the time to elevate the brand. And so One America Works, with our philanthropic mission, is to try to make that match. It's a little shift for us, but we'll you're all welcome to come and check it out on the 21st. But we'll definitely report back.
So in a last thing, because we're sort of running out of time, but I want to talk about startups. So in 1 minute, we're facing one of the strongest investment markets and opportunities in years, and now find ourselves facing investors. Although we did have an exit of a company just during this pandemic, and then a big Series C investment of a company locally as well. But that they're investors now, are they really running for the hills? I mean, the fact that they can't really get here by plane, that they're apprehensive about the pandemic. What are you seeing, like just anecdotally? I know we read a lot of the data, but what are you seeing anecdotally in the Bay Area? And what advice are you giving for people when there really isn't much transport right now and access and pressing flesh in terms of raising funds?
So I think if you had asked me a month ago, I probably would have had a more depressing answer than I do today. So a month ago, like we had a pipeline of companies that, I look at maybe 5 or 6 companies a week, and that had filtered down to maybe 2 or 3, but those 2 or 3 were really strong. Either they had broken term sheets because people had backed out, but these were great companies that should get investment. And the price was down 30 to 50%, right? Because if you had to raise money a month ago, you were kind of in a bad position, right? And a lot of bridges were being done with discounts and stuff like that. That is actually changing a little bit. I would say, just for the entrepreneurs on the call, hold tight a bit. It's warming up. VCs are taking new pitches. Before it was basically, if we hadn't been talking to you, we're not going to talk to you new. So that's changing a little bit, but let me leave all the entrepreneurs with a model. Mm-hmm. There are 3 things that I think about when I'm doing any kind of investing, but especially regional investing. There's 3 questions. Why this? Why you? And why here? Mm-hmm. These questions are more relevant today than ever, especially in this environment, right? The why this, like given everything that we know, your answer better be relevant to the current environment. Are you distributed? Are you whatever? Like, how are you going to operate in this new environment? And this now question is super important. And the why you, again, like, how are you fitting into this market with this change? Like, there's a lot of positive stories for being in Pittsburgh, solving this problem at this time. It could just be like, hey, Western Pennsylvania has actually done pretty well with this. We're going to open a little faster. We don't have to drive that far. We don't have to fly. There's a bunch of answers about why this and why you. Like, I don't have to go to San Francisco now. I can keep my team local. But the why here is the one that I think is the most vital always, but you always have to pitch me to say, why do I do this in Pittsburgh and why shouldn't this be done somewhere else? And right now, if you have a great answer to that, the money should be coming. If it's not, there's something else wrong, because the here is a bigger question than ever. And I think that a lot of things are up in the air. And if a really strong entrepreneur with a great idea should be able to make the talent case, the opportunity case for Pittsburgh or where they are more now than ever. There just isn't going to be much moving around. So like, hey, everybody I need to build this company is already in Pittsburgh. We're not going to fumble because of stay-at-home orders where, you know, the market's going to open up because of this shift that we thought would take 5 years is going to take 2 years. So, I mean, it's a little optimistic, but I think, you know, you always have to think that way as an entrepreneur.
Well, yeah, I mean, I personally think through these times of darkness comes the best innovation and the most light. And that's what I'm going to continue to believe in terms of Pittsburgh. So here's what we want to try, Patrick, if this is okay. I know this is running a little bit longer, but I want to end with, we're going to share and do an experiment and show the video that you have put together. And if you want to, if everyone wants to stay on, we're going to play that video. Brian, do you have it running?
I have audio.
Silicon Valley being at the forefront, things have scaled quickly.
It doesn't have audio.
Companies have to look past their neighborhood to find the best opportunities for growth. Introducing One America Works, an initiative to add new cities to your growth playbook. So where to first? Pittsburgh, the city that's been getting recognized for its growth. Well, you know Pittsburgh for being the city of championships and steel. They do a good job of showcasing this. But you know what Pittsburgh's turned into? A city of discovery and innovation. It's time to bridge the divide between Silicon Valley and Pittsburgh. And guess what? Companies are already catching on. There's some really good reasons why. There's young people with talent ready to join the modern economy without having to relocate. Because there's perks to having a yard and a commute without the stress.
We can hear.
The downtown allows you to bike in the street or the park. There's also all the other things going on. So you might ask yourself, what do the top companies see in Pittsburgh that you're yet to discover? Come and see for yourself.
All right, well, thank you everyone for letting us try that experiment. It was a little hiccupy, but Patrick, I look forward to working with you. We have a lot in common in terms of the passion. I want to thank everyone for joining today and really appreciate the time you've taken with us, Patrick. Tomorrow, we have Rich Lunak from Innovation Works, and we're moving forward each and every day, trying to provide relevant information to everyone. Thanks again and have a great day.